gather around the glow of your favorite device. It's time to dig into the past. Literally. This isn't your average tale of haunted houses or spooky cemeteries. Today, we're venturing into the stone, sand, and secrets of history's most fascinating resting places. We're talking tombs, crypts, sarcophagi, and ancient monuments that make Indiana Jones look like a casual tourist. I'm Mike with List 25, conjuring up 25 gravely serious facts about tombs and crypts. But before we begin, our stats are showing that only half our viewers are subscribed. And I know a lot of us YouTubers always ask you all to like, share, comment, subscribe, but we do it because it truly helps channels like mine grow. If you could subscribe and hit that notification bell, it would mean the world to me and allow us to keep bringing you this awesome content. Okay, on with the list. 25. Tomb of Eurysaces the Baker. There's something wonderfully ironic about a former slave-turned-baker building one of the most ostentatious tombs in ancient Rome. Marcus Vergilius Eurysaces didn't just earn freedom, he kneaded his way to wealth and carved his success story into stone. Standing about 33 feet tall, his tomb is basically a giant ad for bread making. Carvings along the side depict the entire baking process, from grinding the grain to sliding loaves. Imagine commuting past this monument each day. You're a Roman citizen, or maybe an out-of-towner, and there it is, a massive bread-themed tower that looks like a giant ancient mixer. Those circular openings aren't portholes or ventilation. They likely represent grain measuring vessels or kneading basins, reminding everyone that Eurysaces was the master of dough. He wanted the world to know that baked goods could build empires. It's like if a modern pizza delivery guy got buried in a big pizza box. While some elites might have scoffed at a freed former slave flaunting his wealth, Eurysaces used architecture to shout, "I made it!" from the afterlife. The tomb stands as one of the most distinctive funerary monuments in Rome because it broke away from aristocratic norms. Its message was that even a baker could purchase prime real estate by the city gate and immortalize his vocation in stone. Also, who wouldn't want to be remembered every time someone craved bread? Come to think of it, oh crap, I mean a piece of bread. That's an inside joke. 24. Traces of a plague found in a 5,000-year-old Swedish tomb. Most people think of the plague as something straight out of medieval Europe, but guess what? Humans have been dealing with it way longer than that. Back in 2018, researchers decided to check out the teeth of a woman who'd been buried in Sweden about 5,000 years ago. To their surprise, they found DNA from Yersinia pestis, the very same bug behind the Black Death. That means the plague was already a threat to humans thousands of years earlier than we thought. The woman wasn't buried alone either. She was found in a tomb with dozens of others. It seems that an ancient plague outbreak might have already hit prehistoric Europe. Why does this matter? Well, it totally changes how we see ancient people interacting. They weren't just swapping sheep or handmade pottery, they were unknowingly spreading germs too. Imagine living in the Stone Age, completely unaware of why people in your community kept getting sick. No news updates, no internet memes, just confusion and worry. It's likely these microbes hitched rides on trade routes, spreading silently and possibly even causing villages to disappear. The idea of an ancient super spreader event suddenly seems like a distinct possibility. Here's something else that's pretty wild. This early plague bacterium wasn't even as dangerous as the later versions. It was missing a few genes that made the medieval version so deadly, kind of like a beta version of the Black Death before things got really scary. Next time you watch a historical movie with those creepy plague doctors, remember the origin story began thousands of years earlier, hidden in an ordinary tomb in Scandinavia. 23. The oldest drinking straw ever discovered came from a Sumerian tomb. You know how reusable straws seem like they're just about everywhere these days, including inside your water bottles? Well, actually, they're not such a new invention after all. Archaeologists found a drinking straw that's around 5,000 years old buried in a royal tomb in Ur. That's in modern-day Iraq. And it wasn't any ordinary straw. It was made from gold and bright blue lapis lazuli. But don't picture someone sipping iced lattes. This straw was for beer. Back then, beer was thick with grain and chunks, so the straw was actually pretty handy for avoiding a mouthful of soggy mush. The materials tell us this wasn't something ordinary people would use on a daily basis. Gold was valuable, and lapis lazuli came from hundreds of miles away in Afghanistan. Whoever owned this fancy straw was clearly wealthy, powerful, and loved showing it off, like an ancient influencer. The fact that it was buried with them also suggests it was meant for the afterlife, maybe so the owner could kick back and sip on some beer in style for all eternity. Seems like humans have been finding ways to make everyday objects overly fancy for thousands of years. Who knew ancient people were just as extra as we are today? 22. Revolutionaries desecrated the tomb of Louis XIV. When the French Revolution hit, it wasn't just people losing their heads. Royal corpses were getting evicted too. In 1793, a mob of revolutionaries stormed the Basilica of Saint-Denis just outside Paris. For generations, French kings and queens were buried on that site. They weren't there to pay their respects. Tombs were cracked open, bones were dragged out, and bodies, including that of Louis XIV, were dumped into mass graves like yesterday's trash. A place that had once been a peaceful resting ground for royalty turned into something closer to a demolition site. As brutal as it sounds, it wasn't mindless destruction. The revolutionaries were making a statement. By destroying the tombs, they were trying to challenge the notion that kings were chosen by God to rule. To them, dead royals didn't deserve any more dignity than the people they ruled over. Years later, when the monarchy was briefly restored, people tried to clean up the mess. The remains were gathered and then reburied with a tad bit more care. So, if you've ever had to move unexpectedly or had your stuff boxed up by mistake, I'll just be glad you're not Louis XIV. His final address changed from royal tomb to anonymous pit and back again. That's a rough move by any standard, let alone French royalty. 21. Lincoln's Restless Coffin. Speaking of restless dead, did you know Abraham Lincoln's coffin was moved 17 times and opened 5 times? After his assassination in 1865, Lincoln was entombed in Springfield, Illinois. Over the next several decades, his remains were repeatedly relocated due to construction, security upgrades, and even a plot to steal his body. This wasn't a case of ghosts haunting renovations. Real criminals intended to ransom Lincoln's corpse. In 1876, counterfeiters tried to snatch the body to force the release of one of their own from prison. Authorities foiled the plot, but the scare prompted officials to hide the casket in a secret place inside the tomb. After decades of moving and peeking, officials held a final viewing in 1901 to ensure Lincoln was still inside. Witnesses were given the opportunity to get a glimpse of his preserved body on display, and he was reburied under layers of concrete. Today, visiting his tomb is a more final resting place. But if Lincoln's ghost was aware of his afterlife travels, he'd likely demand a hefty mileage reimbursement. 20. Roman comics in a Jordanian tomb. Comic books aren't a modern invention. Apparently the Romans had a sense of humor too. In Beit Ras, Jordan, archaeologists discovered a 2,000-year-old tomb decorated with more than 260 painted figures arranged in narrative scenes. These lively frescoes depict everyday life, farming, construction, banquets, and include speech bubbles written in ancient Aramaic using Greek letters. Yeah, you heard that right. Ancient speech bubbles. Some of the inscriptions describe the actions of the people depicted, as if the characters are narrating their own activities. One reads, "I am cutting," while another laments, "Alas for me, I am dead." The use of Aramaic written with Greek letters is itself a cross-cultural joke. Clearly, even the Romans enjoyed a good laugh in the afterlife, or at least wanted their descendants to chuckle when paying respects. 19. Millions of mummified dogs at Saqqara. If you thought one mummy was spooky, how about 8 million? Archaeologists exploring the dog catacombs at Saqqara in Egypt discovered a labyrinth stuffed with approximately 8 million animal mummies. Most were dogs, but foxes, jackals, cats, and even birds were also present. These weren't pets given a loving burial. They were ritual offerings to Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming in the afterlife. Ancient Egyptians believed presenting mummified animals to the gods ensured divine favor. Worshippers would buy a puppy, hand it over to the temple priests, and it would be killed and sacrificed and mummified as a god. Many of the puppies were bred specifically for this purpose, creating an entire industry around temple offerings. Also, it raises a question. If the afterlife requires that many canine companions, does Anubis double as a dog walker in the underworld? 18. The world's largest cemetery, Wadi Al-Salam. In the birthplace of civilization lies a necropolis so vast it dwarfs the size of many cities. Wadi Al-Salam, meaning Valley of Peace, covers more than 1,500 acres and contains more than 6 million graves, making it the world's largest cemetery. That's about the population of a small country. Burials have been going on here for over 1,400 years in the city of Najaf, Iraq. Why do so many people want to be buried in one place? Well, Wadi Al-Salam is near the Imam Ali Shrine, which is a major pilgrimage site for Shia Muslims. Many of them believe that being sent there to be buried will bring spiritual benefits and closeness to Imam Ali. Families all over the world send bodies to Najaf for burial, which has thus created a bustling funeral economy. The cemetery continues to grow, with new graves getting stacked up above the older ones. Walking through it feels like walking an endless labyrinth of tombstones and mausoleums. If there's a problem that's more pressing than gentrification in modern cities, it might be finding space in Najaf's ever-growing Valley of Peace. 17. Holger the Dane awaits in Kronborg's catacombs. To be or not to be? That is the question. Or to sleep. Deep beneath Kronborg Castle in Denmark lies a stone statue of Holger the Dane. The same fortress was made famous as Elsinore in Shakespeare's Hamlet, that other famous Danish legend. Holger was a heroic knight who fought Charlemagne in his day, and later fell deep into an enchanted sleep. According to legend, he remains in his slumber until Denmark faces its greatest peril. And when that day comes, he will awaken and defend the nation. The statue offers a depiction of Holger seated at his table with his head resting on his arms. It's haunting and oddly comforting for the Danish people. Visitors tiptoe quietly through the damp corridors, whispering so as not to disturb the sleeping giant. Legend says his beard has grown into the table itself. Stories like Holger's blend history and mythology, crafting a national symbol of resilience. While there's no proof that this stone statue has ever suddenly stood up and wielded its sword, it's quite the metaphor. Danes for years have told their children that in times of crisis, Holger will rise up and protect them. Think of him as Denmark's version of Captain America, minus the shield and with way more beard. 16. The Curse of Timur's Tomb. Soviet anthropologist Mikhail Gerasimov stumbled upon the remains of Timur, the 14th century conqueror, while in Uzbekistan. Local legend said there was a warning inside the casket. It supposedly claimed that anyone who disturbed the tomb would release a force even worse than Timur himself. The story of Timur's curse quickly took hold. As German troops tore through Soviet land, whispers spread that opening the tomb had unleashed something dark. In 1942, the remains were reburied with proper Islamic rites. Not long after that, the war started shifting in the Soviets' favor. People noticed the timing and started to believe that putting Timur back to rest had calmed whatever had been disturbed. It mixed old superstition with the fear and uncertainty of war. And honestly, blaming a curse just feels easier than thinking about geopolitics. 15. Pharaoh Akhenaten's erased legacy. Akhenaten was the one pharaoh who dared to turn ancient Egypt's religious order upside down. In the 14th century BCE, he promoted worship of one god, Aten, also known as the sun disk. After his death, his successors, which included his own son, King Tutankhamun, had no interest in maintaining monotheism. They destroyed his capital at Akhenaten and systematically chiseled his name from the monuments. You can just picture laborers meticulously scraping away every cartouche bearing Akhenaten's name. His statues were toppled, his images were defaced, and his memory was banished. Centuries passed, and most scholars didn't even know Aten had ever existed. It wasn't until the discovery of the Amarna letters in 1887 and several archaeological excavations that his story resurfaced. History had hit the delete key in Aten's legacy, only to have the recycle bin restore the tale for us thousands of years later. Modern visitors to the Egyptian Museum marvel at his distinctive art style and wonder what might have been. In a way, his story warns that even pharaohs can be cancelled. 14. The ancient Speyer wine bottle. Who wouldn't want to get buried with their favorite bottle of wine? In a museum in Speyer, Germany, you can find a 1.5-liter glass bottle sealed nearly 1650 years ago. Found in 1867 in the tomb of a Roman nobleman, this container holds the oldest known liquid wine. The bottle's contents are 2/3 wine and 1/3 olive oil with a wax seal that has miraculously prevented evaporation. Lapis lazuli handles shaped like dolphins adorn the neck, adding flair to a very ancient bar cart. The wine inside has long since lost its alcohol. After centuries, it's basically grape juice concentrate with hints of olive. Experts say drinking it would be ill-advised, but the bottle serves as a testament to Roman burial customs. Wine was placed in graves as a provision for the afterlife, ensuring the deceased could toast on the other side. It's the ultimate don't show up empty-handed for eternity. 13. The Unknown Roman Girl of London. In 2007, archaeologists working near the edge of what the Romans called Londinium uncovered a lonely grave of a teenage girl. She was buried all alone, and without the usual grave markers. Dating to the 3rd or 4th century CE, the grave contained a few modest objects. She was buried with a small vial, suggesting someone cared enough to include something for her to carry with her in death. Her burial raises questions about identity and status in Roman Britain. Was she an outsider? A foreigner? Or simply someone who died under mysterious circumstances? The fact that she was buried at all, rather than cremated or left unceremoniously, implies that she wasn't completely abandoned. Archaeologists reburied her remains in 2007 at the site, acknowledging that even forgotten lives deserve respect. 12. The Silver Coffin of Pharaoh Psusennes I. While gold dazzles, silver was the real luxury in ancient Egypt. Psusennes I, a pharaoh of the 21st dynasty, chose to be buried in a solid silver coffin in the royal necropolis at Tanis. Silver was rarer than gold in Egypt, making this choice both flashy and symbolic. The coffin was placed inside gilded wooden coffins and granite sarcophagi, creating a nesting doll of splendor. When archaeologist Pierre Montet opened Psusennes' tomb in 1940, he found one of the most intact burials ever discovered in Egypt. The pharaoh lay beneath a golden funerary mask surrounded by jewelry, amulets, and other treasures. The silver coffin itself was inlaid with gold decorations, reflecting both opulence and religious significance. This burial also highlights ancient trade networks. Since silver had to be imported, acquiring enough to make an entire coffin indicates global connections and wealth. Psusennes' tomb demonstrates that even in periods of decline, Egyptians could pull off an impressive afterlife arrangement. Somewhere, King Tut is glancing at his own golden coffin and thinking, nice, but have you seen my neighbor's silver upgrade? 11. A tomb decorated with potatoes. In Paris's Père Lachaise cemetery, there's a grave regularly adorned with potatoes. It belongs to Antoine Augustin Parmentier, the French agronomist and war veteran who championed the humble tuber. During his imprisonment by Prussians, Parmentier survived on potatoes and later became determined to convince French society that the vegetable was safe and nutritious. He hosted lavish dinners featuring potatoes and even hired guards to protect potato fields, tricking Parisians into thinking the crop was valuable. Parmentier's efforts paid off. The once scorned potato became a staple in France and across Europe. Today, visitors leave potatoes on his grave as a tribute to the man who changed their dinner plates forever. Some decorate them with notes or drawings, turning a starchy offering into a quirky memorial. It's the culinary equivalent of leaving flowers at a rock star's tomb. If you ever visit Père Lachaise, bring a spud. Just don't try to plant it there. The cemetery has enough residents. 10. Human sacrifice in the royal tombs of Ur. The royal tombs of Ur, excavated in the 20s and 30s, revealed a startling practice: mass human sacrifice. Rulers were buried with lavish grave goods, including gold jewelry, musical instruments, and ornate headdresses. But the real shock came from the so-called death pits surrounding the main burial chambers. Bodies of soldiers, attendants, and musicians were arranged neatly, often dressed elaborately, suggesting they went to the afterlife with their lord. Some of the men wore copper helmets and carried spears, while women wore intricate headgear. The positions of the bodies and evidence of sedation hint that they might have willingly accepted their fate, perhaps under the belief that serving their ruler in the afterlife guaranteed a privileged existence. It's both chilling and fascinating. Imagine being invited to a royal funeral and realizing there's no return trip. The tombs also underscore the staggering wealth of Ur's rulers and the length they went to ensure company in the eternity. Suddenly, those old video game escorts where you have to accompany an NPC forever makes more sense. Ah, the adoring fan. 9. Japan's massive Kofun tombs. Between the 3rd and 7th century CE, Japan's elites were buried in colossal earthen mounds known as Kofun. The most iconic shape resembles a keyhole when seen from above, a large circle attached to a smaller rectangle. The Daisen Kofun in Osaka, attributed to Emperor Nintoku, measures roughly 500 meters long and rises about 35 meters high. In terms of area, it rivals the Great Pyramid of Giza. These tombs weren't built by a few shovel-wielding peasants, they required massive labor and resources. Moats often surrounded the mounds, and the interiors contained burial chambers filled with weapons, armor, mirrors, and clay figurines called haniwa. Only members of the imperial family or powerful clan leaders merited such grand send-offs. In many cases, the tombs remain off-limits, shrouded in secrecy, and surrounded by modern urban life. The sheer scale of Kofun reflects the emergence of centralized power in early Japan. They also highlight a cultural emphasis on connecting the living with the dead through monumental architecture. Next time you marvel at a skyscraper, remember that ancient engineers built earthworks just as awe-inspiring, without cranes. 8. Newgrange, a Neolithic solar observatory. On the shortest day of the year, a beam of light creeps through a small opening above a 5,000-year-old tomb in Ireland and floods the inner chamber. This is Newgrange, a massive passage tomb built around 3200 BCE. Its passage and chamber line precisely with the sunrise on the winter solstice. As the sun rises, its rays travel down a 19-meter passageway and illuminate the burial chamber for about 17 minutes. Think Indiana Jones. The engineering precision needed for such an alignment is staggering. The builders had to know the sun's exact position on the solstice and create a roof box to direct the light. It's essentially a prehistoric planetarium. Visitors lucky enough to witness the event describe it as magical. A golden shaft dispelling darkness, connecting the living to ancestors and cosmic cycles. It's also a reminder that Neolithic societies were far more astronomically savvy than we might assume. Other passage tombs in the region show similar alignments, indicating a cultural emphasis on solar cycles. These tombs likely served ceremonial functions and may have acted as calendars, guiding agricultural practices. They also demonstrate that people thousands of years ago could build structures that still function precisely today. And if you're wondering, yes, archaeologists hold an annual lottery for seats inside Newgrange on solstice morning. 7. A backyard Etruscan tomb. In 2015, a farmer near Città del Pieve in Italy was digging his field when his shovel hit something unusual. It turned out to be an intact Etruscan tomb dating back over 2,000 years. Inside were sarcophagi, urns, and grave goods that shed light on the sophisticated civilization that predated Rome. Discoveries like this remind us that Italy is a treasure trove where ancient history literally lies beneath one's feet. The surprise discovery underscores how much of the ancient world remains buried and how chance often plays a role in uncovering it. Somewhere beneath a modern city or a quiet garden lies a forgotten chapter of history. So next time you're gardening, keep an eye out. You might just stumble upon an ancient tomb, or at least some really old pottery shards. 6. St. Nicholas and the miracle of the Manna. St. Nicholas isn't just the model for Santa Claus. His tomb in Wadi, Italy supposedly exudes a mysterious liquid called manna. According to tradition, the remains of the 4th century saint produce a watery substance collected annually on May 9th by church officials. For centuries, believers have considered this liquid miraculous, attributing healing properties to it. Bottles of the diluted manna are sold to pilgrims, adding a dash of mystique to religious tourism. Modern analysis suggests the liquid is actually water that condenses and seeps into the tomb, possibly mixing with oils and other residues. In 1925, scientists found that the substance contained no oil, challenging the idea that it was oily myrrh and pointing to a natural explanation. However, even when science demystifies miracles, faith often persists. Devotees still revere the manna, seeing it as a symbol of St. Nicholas's intercession. This tradition highlights how relics and rituals can endure through the centuries of skepticism. It also shows that a good legend can boost a city's profile. Wadi's basilica draws pilgrims and tourists alike, all eager to witness a bit of manna. Whether you view it as holy or simply as humidity at work, the ritual continues to captivate. Plus, who doesn't like the idea of Santa's ancestor producing artisanal water? 5. The Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. In 2018, excavations in Alexandria, Egypt uncovered a massive black granite sarcophagus weighing nearly 30 tons. Speculation swirled. Could it belong to Alexander the Great? Was it cursed? When researchers finally pried the lid open, they discovered not glittering treasure, but 3 decomposed skeletons floating in foul-smelling red goo. The liquid turned out to be a mix of sewage and decomposition fluids that seeped into the coffin over centuries. The skeletons likely belonged to soldiers or officials, based on injuries and artifacts found nearby. The red soup of decay dashed hopes for a spectacular mummy, but provided valuable information about burial practices and the state of Alexandria's infrastructure. Thousands of people signed a tongue-in-cheek petition requesting to drink the red liquid for immortality. Authorities politely declined. This was one ancient beverage better left unsipped. While the find may have disappointed treasure hunters, it serves as a cautionary tale about expectations. Sometimes archaeologists unearth spectacular artifacts. Other times they find sewage. But every discovery adds a piece to the puzzle of ancient life. As far as curses go, the only curse here might be the smell. 4. Gol Gumbaz's Whispering Gallery. In the Indian city of Vijayapura stands Gol Gumbaz, a 17th century mausoleum crowned with one of the largest domes ever built. The dome encloses a whispering gallery, where sound waves bounce off the walls with uncanny clarity. Even a whisper travels around the balcony and returns amplified, allowing visitors on opposite ends to converse quietly across a 44-meter span. It's like having a built-in surround sound system from the 1600s. The effect can be eerie. Clap your hands, or hum a tune, and echoes reverberate multiple times, overlapping and creating a musical quality. Legends say that on windy days, the passing air produces tones that resemble flute notes. Scientific studies attribute the phenomenon to the dome's precise curvature and reflective plaster, which focuses sound waves along the gallery. So while there might not be literal ghosts playing the flute, physics definitely is. Gol Gumbaz houses the tomb of Sultan Muhammad Adil Shah, his family, and attendants. The mausoleum's monumental scale and acoustic marvel reflect the wealth and ingenuity of the Adil Shahi dynasty. Visitors climb up narrow staircases to reach the gallery, often competing to test the echoes. It's both a solemn burial place and an interactive acoustic playground. Just don't start a drum circle without earplugs, okay? 3. Sweden's naturally mummified bishop. Not all mummies are wrapped in linen. In the crypt of Lund Cathedral in Sweden, the body of Bishop Peder Winstrup, who died in 1679, dried naturally and became one of the best preserved 17th century bodies in Europe. The preservation resulted from a combination of factors: constant airflow in the crypt, plant material in the coffin, a long illness that left the body lean, winter burial, and the cool climate of the cathedral. Mother Nature did the embalming. Winstrup's internal organs remained intact, allowing modern scientists to conduct CT scans that revealed gallstones, atherosclerosis, and evidence of pneumonia. The bishop's right shoulder was higher than his left, showing he had a tendon injury. Researchers even discovered a small fetus hidden beneath his feet, possibly placed there secretly during burial. Talk about finding an unexpected roommate centuries later. This mummification underscores how environmental conditions can preserve bodies without human intervention. It's similar to the way bogs in northern Europe have kept Iron Age individuals in remarkable condition. Winstrup's case provides a window into the health and lifestyle of a 17th century clergyman. Also, if you ever feel self-conscious about your posture, remember that even bishops had shoulder problems. 2. Rope-bound mummies in Peru and Chile. In 2021, archaeologists at the Cajamarquilla site near Lima, Peru, uncovered a mummy in a fetal position bound tightly with ropes. The young man, dated between 800 and 1200 years old, had his hands covering his face and was buried alongside a guinea pig and a dog. Researchers believe the rope binding was part of a ritual to keep the deceased from moving or to symbolize their journey to the afterlife. Some pre-Columbian cultures in Peru and northern Chile also buried mummies face down or tied them to prevent wandering spirits. To modernize, the practice might seem macabre, but within the cultural context, it reflected beliefs about death and ancestral presence. The bound position could signify humility, containment, or readiness for rebirth. It might have also discouraged the dead from returning to bother the living. Each bound mummy tells a story about fear, respect, and the human desire to control what happens after we're gone. 1. The Nachzehrer, Shroud-Eating vampires of medieval Europe. In German folklore, the Nachzehrer, literally after-consumer, was a revenant believed to cause disease and death from its grave. Unlike the vampires of Transylvania, this creature didn't crawl out of its coffin to suck blood. It stayed put and devoured its burial shroud and even its own flesh. Legends say that as the Nachzer chewed, members of its family above ground fell ill. The idea likely arose from observations of decomposing bodies. Sometimes shrouds tore or lips receded, making it appear as though corpses had been chewing. To prevent a Nachzer from wreaking havoc, villagers placed stones or spikes in the mouth of the deceased or decapitated the body. Essentially, they turned burial rituals into preventative measures against undead shroud-eating. While Dracula gets all the press, the Nachzer quietly gnawed through funerary linen and terrified villagers in its own way. Next time you see a brick in someone's mouth at an archaeological site, you might be looking at an anti-vampire security system. And that's all. But now, it's time for today's trivia question. Which tomb on our list contains over 260 figures painted in narrative scenes accompanied by speech bubbles written in ancient Aramaic? Think you know? Pause the video and leave your guess in the comments below. No cheating. The answer awaits those who listened carefully. Now we have journeyed from bread-themed monuments, in Rome, to rope-bound mummies in Peru. From whispers echoing across a giant dome in India to the eerie tales of shroud-eating revenants in medieval Europe. These stories remind us that humanity's relationship with death is complex and creative. Whether building colossal mounds, decorating coffins with potatoes, or aligning tombs with the solstice, people throughout history have invested enormous effort into what happens after the final curtain. Let us know which fact surprised you the most, and drop your own favorite tomb tales in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, when it comes to history, sometimes the dead tell the best tales.